So yeah, just welcome to everyone joining us today. This would be part 4 of this little learning and connecting series we're doing at the Lawson Foundation as part of our child and youth diabetes strategy. So we have various people that are in our network join us and talk about the work and whatnot that they do, and just give people an opportunity to learn more about that and chat. Feel free to put questions in the chat, or David can take questions at the end. It is being recorded, and we do put these on the Lawson website afterwards so they can be referenced in the future. Yeah, and with that, I guess I'll let David introduce himself, and we'll take it from there. Thanks.
Thank you, Jeff. I assume my sound is working. Let's start the presentation. Okay. Oh, I don't like this because I can't see you. I used to, because now all I can see is my own screen. Anyway, very nice to meet you all. I didn't really know what to prepare for, meaning that I didn't know how many people were going to be actually from communities and were going to know about my realities as someone who was born and raised on a community. So I provide a little bit of information. From my understanding, at least in my part of the country, every community is very different. So I assume that even if you are from a community, I think your communities might be very different from the communities that I interact with, and from the community that I grew up in. So some of that information is still going to be relevant to all of you. So a little bit about myself. So my name is David Gill. Above all, I'm what we call a Pigwag Mi'kmaq. So it's from the Innu Nation. So it's an Innu from the Flat Lake. So it's the lake called Lac Saint-Jean. It's around 3 hours north of Quebec. I'll get back to with more information about my community. The name of my community is Mashtiwiats. It's a name that we recently changed. I think in the 1990s we went back to a native name. It wasn't called for that. It wasn't called that for a long time. In my community, we speak mainly some people speak Innu. Most people speak French. We are one of 9 Innu communities on the Quebec territory. Most of them learn Innu as a first language. In my community, however, most people learn French as a first language. And then if they study well at school, which I did not do when I was young, because it was already almost 40 years ago, they learn Innu at school. Now, kids now and schools are doing a much better job now at teaching Innu and the ancestral way of life and language to youth. So now we're seeing lots and lots, more and more of those kids from my community speaking the language, as opposed to other communities of my nation where it's pretty much a given they learn Innu as the first language. Why am I talking to you? Why am I the one speaking to you guys today? Is because on top of being born on my community, I evolved as a high level athlete. So I was on the track and field national team. So I represented Canada in several competitions. So I trained for years. And as an athlete, I quickly became involved as a motivational speaker in various communities to try and get mostly kids, but the population as a whole, to be more active physically. And since then, I started working as a consultant in First Nations health, specifically in exercise. So there are various facets to health, of course. My um, my specialty is definitely around getting people to move more. So I work with various organizations, provincial organizations, mainly First Nations organizations, to develop projects and programs to try and better our people's way of life. There are 3 projects that I want to talk to you about, each very, very different from one to another. I'll spend about 15 minutes on each project. I don't want to go into too much detail. My goal today would be for you guys to really understand each one of those projects, perhaps get ideas for your own communities, ideas for, maybe inspiration to scale some of these projects or to just reproduce or copy them as you wish. Obviously, all of those initiatives are nonprofits. They are funded through various organizations, foundations, and they are all aimed at improving the health of First Nations members. All right, so we're going to talk about 3 very different projects. Like I said, I'll even point out the challenges that we run into, the problems, the things that you should not repeat should you try to build one of those projects on your own community. So I'll be really transparent, and I'll be open to answering any questions that you may have as well. I'm going to acknowledge a few partners. First of all, the Lawson Foundation. Lawson Foundation is a relatively new partner. It has partnered now with 2 of the 3 projects that I'm going to talk to you about. I also want to acknowledge the First Nations Education Council. As I said at the beginning, I work with organizations. So some of those projects, although I will found a project or have the original idea and come up with the idea, those projects would only be possible if they were under a larger organization that has the human force, that has the funding, that has the resources to make those projects come to life. The First Nation Education Council is one of them. I also work with the New Pathways Foundation, so a foundation here in the Quebec province that works mainly with the youth in various domains, one of them being health. So I collaborate with them as well. And each project will only be possible thanks to multiple other partners that help out in sometimes all of the projects, sometimes one from time to time. All right. So first, I'd like to address, it's not something that I was going to do, but since I didn't know if the attendees knew anything about Life on Community, I thought I'd include a little bit of information about my community and what it is, what life is like on a community. I capitalized here the my community because, like I said at the beginning, communities are very, very different, extremely different, actually. And that's one thing that we constantly fight for. We don't like being aggregated. We don't like being generalized. Each community is very different, and we like to be treated as independent little governments. And that finds its roots in how different life is in each community. My community, like I said before, is called CYDS. I was very fortunate to be born on a community for various reasons. So to me, it was always a blessing, and it can be challenging for some people for sure. For me, for various reasons, I'm very glad that I was born and have that heritage in me. You will, I don't like generalizing, but I will generalize here. Communities are always beautiful. They're always beautiful. Why? Because, well, they were often picked by people who were roaming the land and could choose the most, the best places to gather at. And so they're always going to be, often at least in Quebec, close to water, close to very large or nice bodies of water. They have access to hunting grounds, and they're, anyway, all the communities that I visited, including the one I come from, are amazingly beautiful. Like I said, we speak French and Innu. The community itself is a very, very, very small land, extremely small, actually. We are part of a very large region where we would have, where this distances between houses would normally be really, really large. However, the reserve itself is a super, super small territory. So the houses on my community are actually all crunched up together. So that's why those communities are often, I don't want to say temporary settlements, because it's not what they are, but people do spend a lot of their time off community on the land to hunt or just spend time on the land. So we do live on the community, but people tend to move out of the community and spend quite a bit of time off reserve on the land. And it's one of the considerations that we need to keep in mind when we're delivering projects on community. We have full weeks several times a year where people are just gone from the community, and we do need to consider that when we're trying to deliver and schedule projects. We are very welcoming to outsiders. It's good to ask, but nowadays we have powwows in a lot of communities. It's good to ask, but I know in my community, people, like outsiders, are very welcome. They sometimes feel bad and they don't know if they should come. We're very welcoming. We like to have outsiders come and see what we do. If it comes from a place of respect, we're really happy to have to share what we have with others. We are a very shy people. I'm not particularly shy, but that's clearly something, a denominating factor in most people that I meet on community. Very, very shy people, but a crazy, crazy sense of humor. Really, if you can make them laugh, you have broken a huge barrier. Really good way to get in touch with those people. Few drawbacks: diabetes, huge problem. Actually, all components of the metabolic syndrome, huge problems on community. That really is something that we need to tackle. One of the reasons is inactivity, especially in children. I think in years to come, we're going to find out how much COVID hurt us. Screens are plaguing our community, our children. Really, really big problems. It's a reality that everyone faces, but it's something that I see even more in the communities that I deal with. Today, you're going to hear me say tons of terms. I just want to apologize in advance. I do say Indians. My granddad would call us his little Indians. It's not pejorative, and it's a term that not everybody should use, but it's a term that we do use amongst ourselves. And it's something that you may hear me say. I apologize in advance if it offends people. It doesn't come from that place at all. I do say native, I do say Aboriginal, all that interchangeably. That's in my personal vocabulary. I try to use First Nations. That's my preferred term. For anything non-First Nations, sometimes I will use the term white. I'll try not to. It does sound pejorative again, but I could say non-Aboriginal, but that is something that you may hear. I just wanted to put it out there and apologize in advance. All right. So in all projects that we develop for communities, there are quite a few factors that you need to consider that are relatively, some of them are specific to communities. By the way, whenever I say community, what I mean is First Nation community. I realize that there are white populations that are communities as well. What I mean is First Nation communities. Some of them are very remote. Okay, so you look at the map. I love this map, by the way. If you look on the far right, you're going to see Romaine, one of them. It's the second one from the right, Romaine. This is actually called Unamin-Shipu. That's the Innu name. That's from my nation. This is where we just held one of our projects a few weeks ago. Doesn't look too far on the map, but that takes about, I would say, it's a 12-hour drive, and then you from Quebec City, that's where I am, 12-hour drive to a place where you take the boat, and then you take the boat for about 18, 20 hours. So the animation team that came from the project had to leave a week in advance because the boat only gets there on Wednesday of every week. And you don't really know at what time it's going to get there. So it changed our budget. It changed the availability of the team. So the remoteness of some communities is definitely a big factor. And Unamin-Shipu, that community that I'm talking about, and Pakwashipi, the other one that's just further on the right, those communities, there's just nothing else than the boat or the airplane that reach them. Up north, well, in the middle of that big empty space, you can see Kawawashikamash in yellow. That's in Naskapi, the only Naskapi community in this territory, along with Matimekos. That's another Innu one. Those ones can only be reached by plane or by train. So those are, yeah, very remote communities. Something else that's very specific to our projects is that everything on a community depends on a few very important individuals. So you have a few people that are there. They are it's so important to have a good network of contact when you're trying to deliver something on a community. You need to talk to the right people, and a lot of the services fall onto the shoulders of those very few people. So having a good network, having good relationships with those people is absolutely key. Like I said at the beginning, they do spend a lot of people off reserve. They're going to be on their land. So that's something you need to consider. Language can be a barrier, absolutely. Language can often be a problem, and which is a good thing. What I mean by that is more and more communities actually teach their children in full immersion. Lots of, I would say, close to half of our communities in Quebec. I wouldn't want to exaggerate. Close anyway. It's a large number of our communities. I would say that kids under the age of 7 or 8 will speak very little of another language than their mother language. Again, I don't want to exaggerate the proportion here because I only visited a few different nations, but I'm actually pleasantly surprised to see how much we're trying to revigorate those native languages. And one of the ways to do that is through immersion. So you spend the first few years of school being taught in your own language, and then you learn French and English later on. But if you're delivering a project, for example, one of them that you're going to hear about today, like the Ancestors Challenge, and you're trying to give guidelines to young kids about how to perform a certain task, well, you need to know that that kid might not understand you if you don't speak the language. So you'll need interpreters, or you'll need the teachers there with you. So it's something that you definitely need to consider. On communities, you do have some sometimes unfortunate events that happen, and that will have large impact on the entire community. It can be, I don't like using those those examples, but anyway, you have some unfortunate events that can happen on a community that just shut down the entire community. So as a project manager, when you're trying to deliver an initiative, you need to be ready and understanding of those situations that do occur. You have to be in touch with the community and what's happening, and be able to adapt to those events that can really have a strong ripple effect in the community. There is a bit of disorganization in communities. Sometimes you want to respect the schedule. You want everybody to respect the task that you set up for them. But things don't always go that way. So you need to be really, really ready to adapt and take the successes as they happen. Anytime we send a team in a community, they know that they might very well get there and have to build everything from scratch with whatever they have, and try to build something beautiful out of that. So we try to make sure our teams are really, really adaptable and able to have a good time and see the positive in those sometimes difficult, challenging situations. Now let's get specific, because we're talking very general. How do you deliver a project on a community? Now let's get more specific. First project I want to talk about is called the Ancestors Challenge. The Ancestors Challenge is a project that we started in 2021 as a response to the pandemic. So what we needed to come up with was a project that would have good chances of being greenlit, even in the context of a pandemic, meaning that groups couldn't be with one another. People needed to wear masks. We couldn't have too many people enter a community. We couldn't gather too many people together. So there was a lot of limitations that we had to face. So we came up with the Ancestors Challenge, which is basically a Ninja Warrior obstacle course that is on a flatbed, so on a trailer behind a truck, that we would tow and deploy in the schoolyard. So we're talking about a Ninja Warrior course of about 12 obstacles. From one year to another, it changes. So we started with a 400-meter course. The last edition that we had was a 100-meter course, which was more obstacle intense. But within 1 year, one season, nothing changes. So if we have a 400-meter course, for example, well, we're going to do our entire tour with a 400-meter obstacle course. I'll get to why in a minute. It's open to all youth, so that's one of the strengths of the Ancestors Challenge. It's open to absolutely everyone. So I say 5 to 18-year-old. Actually, we have some adults that do, for example, the band council employees against the school teachers. So we have some adult challenges that often take place. We also have some very, very young kids, like kindergarten or pre-K kids that participate as well. So in all skill levels. So we have some kids with handicaps that participate. We adapt the challenge. We really, I want to say 100% of kids get to participate in the Ancestors Challenge. Like I said before, the course is set up exactly in the same way in every community that we visit, so that it becomes an inter-community or inter-school competition, so that the people who feel like they want to perform and compare themselves with other kids from other communities can do so. This is an example of the 2022 tour. So you have an idea of how many communities we visited. So 17 communities. We We did not visit the Cree communities or the Inuit communities, so we were really under the First Nation Education Council communities, which represents 24 communities. So those are the communities that we visited. So very intense. We spend 3 to 5 days in a community. We take a full day to set up, a full day to tear down. Then we move to the next community and repeat again 17 times in a row. So it's about a 3-month tour. At total, we awarded, I don't have a picture of the medal, but everybody that completes the Ancestors Challenge gets the Ancestors Challenge medal. The medal changes every year. And so we had people this year that came up to the challenge with 3 medals because we visited them over the last 3 years. So they came and showed us the 3 medals. We added recently a special event, which is a final at the inter-school games. I happen to coordinate the inter-school games, which take place in May. So it's a 1 week event where people from all communities in Quebec get together and compete in Quebec City in various events. And we added the Ancestors Challenge as one of the events at those games. So now you have the best elements of every community that come together and compete. Now this is clearly more elitist, meaning that it's only delegates. So the best athletes of every community participates, which is not the goal of the Ancestors Challenge. The goal of it is really to have everyone participate. So what I want you all to remember the Ancestors Challenge for is the fact that it is in community and everybody participates. The fact that it's also an event at the inter-school games is just a little bonus to make it more fun for those people who are performance focused. Here's a little video that'll show you concretely what the Ancestors Challenge looks like. All right, I just didn't want to let the video run and all the way at the end. It's this like 6-minute video. You may receive this presentation afterwards, so you can feel free to press play and let it play for the whole time. I'm gonna wrap up the part about the Ancestors Challenge. This is on our website where you can see all of the performances. This is only for the kids who are performance oriented and want to be compared. This is a part where we provide educational activities that can be done at school. So basically what we want to do is use the popularity of the Ancestors Challenge as a source of motivation for the kids at school. So we create those activities so that teachers have an easier time selling, for example, mathematics exercises because they talk about the Ancestors Challenge. Same thing for French activities or English activities. So we just try to use the challenge's popularity to increase motivation in school. This is an example of one of those activities where the kids have to, so this is an art activity where kids have to create their own bib number. Okay, so this wraps up the Ancestors Challenge part. Now, the pros and cons, in reality, not everything is perfect for the Ancestors Challenge. What's awesome about the Ancestors Challenge is, like I said, it's open to 100% of the youth. It's culturally relevant. Yes, it is. Now, I'm sure some of you heard the term Ancestors Challenge and then saw those steel obstacles like monkey bars and stuff, and are wondering, why is it called the Ancestors Challenge? What does it have to do with the ancestors? Um, Here's the rationale behind it. What we do when we visit a community is we often visit the classrooms, and we give them a little speech to explain to them the idea behind the Ancestors Challenge. What we tell them is that our ancestors' way of life presented them with their own obstacles, right? Their obstacles were very different from our obstacles today, of course. They had to, paddle upriver in a canoe. They had to walk for kilometers and kilometers. They had to build their camp. They had to hunt. They had to portage. They had to do so much. And it was never a race. It was just always a matter of going through that obstacle. And today, those obstacles, those ancestors, I'm sorry, are no longer with us, but they're looking at us. And, we're on our screens and video games and iPhones and all that. And those ancestors are wondering, would we be able to go through those same obstacles today? And so the Ancestors Challenge is young people's way to answer those ancestors and show them that yes, kids today are still able to go through those tough physical obstacles. So that's the idea that we present them with, and that's often the way that we can motivate those less active kids that aren't really into it for the athletic part of it. They're into it because they want to be proud. They want to make their ancestors proud. So that's the way we explain it to them. Another pro of the Ancestors Challenge is that it takes place on community. That's just so important to have some cool things that happen right there in the kids' schoolyard. The Ancestor Challenge is deployed with a very small team. We can be down to 3 people deploying a challenge. So that's really important. We need to have we can't have large teams going in communities delivering those projects. It's way easier when we have small teams, and it can be done because of that at a relatively low cost. Now, cons, it's injuries do happen. It's a physical challenge. Things can happen. So it's always, I'm always a little bit nervous because I don't want anything bad to happen. So it's a physical project. So things do happen. We require for the community to provide first aid. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But it's always something I have on my mind. Um, the impact on kids' health is very punctual. So let's be honest here. It's a cool challenge. It's a cool game. Kids love it. But what real impact does it have on people's health? Um, Not much. I think there's a lot of things we could improve to make the challenge have a wider footprint and impact. As of now, its impact on health is relatively punctual, they're relatively small. It's pretty demanding on the team. We're talking about a several month long tour, so you have to find the right people, and after that tour, those people need a break because it's extremely demanding. You're talking about a combination of physical work because you set up the obstacle course, but then you also animate the kids. So it's not just a matter of doing the challenge, going through the obstacle course. It's a lot of animation and keeping them on task and making sure they have fun. very demanding on the team. It's also very difficult to find the type of team that you need, because those people need to be really good animators. They also need to be hard physical workers. They need to, yeah, it's a bunch of multitaskers, and so it's we haven't had so many problems so far, but I could definitely see that as being a hurdle. And obviously, it's weather dependent. Not that we ever cancel the challenge because the weather is bad, except in the case of lightning. However, well, number one, you can't have the challenge in the winter unless you did it inside, and we never tried. So it is season dependent, and the amount of fun you're going to have doing the challenge is very weather dependent, of course. So if it's raining and cold, you're not going to have as much fun as if it's super nice out. All right. So that sums up the ancestors challenge part. Now I'd like to move on to a completely different project, which is called the Grand Portage. Now you may hear me say the Grand Portage. You may hear me say the Great Portage. You may hear me say the Grand Portage camps. They're all the same. We're not really sure what we're using as the name. Great, Grand, that's French versus English, and in reality, it's all a camp. What I mean by a camp is it's an experience that is it's an experience that we have a group of kids go through. So we call it a camp. So it's a Grand Portage camp. What is a Grand Portage? The Grand Portage camp basically is a trail building camp. So what we do is we have a team of animators that goes on a community. We take the kids out of the school, and the kids build a 2-kilometer trail in the forest around the community for the community. The trail is done in about 5 days. Believe it or not, I have a quick video where you're going to see some kids working. In 5 days, we're able to build that 2-kilometer trail. That trail then becomes really a landmark in the community, and it becomes it's pretty unbelievable what we can do in 5 days with those kids. So 5 days of work, 5 animators, 2-kilometer in the end. At least that's the goal. Sometimes we do a little bit more, sometimes we do a little bit less. We do let them play around with tools, and that's all based on the trust that they merit. So depending on how trustworthy the person, on how responsible the kid is being, the kid is going to be able to use more and more dangerous tools, and we're okay with that. We have groups of 5 to 20 kids, depending on what the school prefers, on how on the type of group, the types of kids. So we negotiate with the school to try to come up with the best schedule. So 5 to 20 kids per group, and then we have various groups during the week. So in the end, at the end of the 5 weeks, every single student of the school has participated in building the community trail. How is the trail? These images on the left, by the way, you can see the little tag, the little portage tag, and these are actually what we leave on the community. So it's very professional. The type of trail that we build is a natural trail. So it's going to look exactly like a portage trail. So the kids, the trail is going to remain very natural. There's going to be some rocks, there's going to be some roots. We're okay with that. So the trail stays very natural. Oh, I kept the French thing here. Éphémère. Okay, éphémère is a term that means that it's only going to be, that it doesn't have to be made forever. What I mean by that is that sometimes you're going to have some communities that say, hey, here's a piece of land where you could build the trail. However, we don't want you to build anything there because we might have plans in the future to have people live there, to build houses and stuff. It's important when we approach a community for them to understand that whatever we build with the kids now can be modified. So if they do 5 years down the road want to use part of the land to build something, it doesn't mean we can't do the project. We can still do it. And in 5 years, your kids are going to have the expertise needed to take a certain part of the trail and rebuild it somewhere else, or to use another piece of land completely and rebuild the trail. And that's really important. Because yeah, we want to remove as many breaks as possible when we approach a community. So telling them that that if the trail that we built is only there for 2 years and it's okay, that removes a huge break. In reality, though, the reality is that oftentimes those projects that the community has with a certain piece of land tend to take a lot longer than they planned. So it turns out, because they let us do that, it turns out the trail does stay for way longer than anticipated. Here is a map that I screenshotted. So where you see the orange little hiking icons are places where we already built a Grand Portage trail. So if you guys have one close to where you're located, if any of you is in Quebec, let me know and go visit those trails. They are actually nice and usable trails today. It's pretty surprising that was all done in only 5 days. Whenever we leave a community, we leave them with maps. So we have tags on the trees. We have those maps that are displayed everywhere, so people can really use. If you look at the map on the right, this is one that is done in Temiskaming. So if you look at the map here on the far left, you have the community called Temiskaming First Nation. So the map on the right here is the Temiskaming First Nation map. Everywhere that you see a little tent on the map is actually a classroom. So it's just an open area in the woods where school teachers can leave the school with their kids and go and teach their kids in the trail. So that's why we try to have those trails be built really close to schools. We did the same in a community called Kiriganzibi and Meshtewiyats, my home community. So those are two trails that are really, really close to the school, and and teachers use them all the time. And we're not talking about phys ed courses. Of course, phys ed courses can take place there, but we're talking about regular classrooms as well. Why do we do that? Why trail building? Well, there's the obvious that we're building a trail which is going to be used by the community. So we're building a durable infrastructure for the kids themselves and for the entire community. That's an obvious benefit. And if it was only that, I think the project would be relevant. Now, there are tons of other reasons why this makes sense. Number one, it empowers those who participate in the project. What do I mean by empowering? What I mean by that is, and I don't know if any of you have already experienced this, but please try it sometime. Try volunteering in building some kind of infrastructure that is going to be used by others in the future. What you're going to see is every time someone is going to come up to you or come up to anyone in front of you and say, hey, I just went and walked in that trail. Knowing that you are one of those people that put that together, that made that happen, will give you a sense of pride, unlike any other feeling, actually. So, and that's something that I experienced personally by working on trails around Quebec City. And so that's what we wanted kids to go through as well. We want them to work hard at something, and then in the following days, weeks, months, and years, feel that pride of being the reason why all of those people in the community can now have that infrastructure, can now get physically active, can now have fun in a safe environment. So really that empowerment part is really, really, really key. And no one knows that it's going to happen. No one knows they're going to feel that way, but they do. And we know that they do. So we make them work hard, and then when we're gone, then they start reaping the benefits. It helps troubled youth shine. That's something that I really like. Honestly, we didn't know that it was going to be like that before building the project. One thing that we noticed is that we have teachers or school directors that tell us, okay, here's a group. We're only going to send you 5 of them because they're really rough. Like they are our toughest kids. They never listen. You'll see. They won't listen. Don't give them tools. They're going to be really dangerous with them. And it turns out those kids really, really shine because they're not in a classroom. They're outside in the forest, and they can shine in a different way. And what's also cool about that is that their teacher is there working with them. So the teachers get to see their troubled kids shining and being responsible and manipulating dangerous tools safely and working in teams and investing in something else than themselves and in something for their community. And that really helps the relationship between that teacher and that kid. So that's a biggie for me. Fosters and connection to the earth. That's for sure. Values physical work. More and more of those kids have suffer from depression. Physical work is one of the best remedies for depression. Not being in your head so much, being active at doing something helps a great deal. So I think we have kids experience that the freedom that comes from physical work. It obviously promotes outdoor education. Like I said before, we put together a free, durable infrastructure outside of the school that kids and their teachers can use for education. So that's really good. It nurtures responsibility. What do I mean by responsibility? What we mean by that is one issue that we have on communities is vandalism. We do have that. A lot of the high quality infrastructures that we build on community get vandalized. Why do they get vandalized? There's a ton of reasons. To me, it's simply, if you don't have anything to do, it doesn't matter if you're not a good or a bad kid, you're just a kid with nothing to do. And that's what's going to happen, right? The big difference when a kid participated in building the trail is that it responsibilizes that kid, and that kid is now going to be a protector of that trail. That kid is not going to accept that anyone vandalize the trail that he built. So you end up with a bunch of protectors of the trail. You end up with a bunch of people who will maintain and will even upgrade the trail. So that's another one. Builds teamwork skills. Here's a quick video. So here's a forest. Like this is what the regular forest looks like. And I'm not going to press play yet because I just want you to just see how, maybe try to even come up with your own idea of where the trail could end up in there. And here's a video it's a quick time lapse of what happened in about maybe 15 minutes of work. So here it is. This was in, I believe this was in Mashdewiats. And you see, what we try to do is have each group see the progress from the beginning until the end. So this was the trail before. So we want each kid to see the finished product at the end of an hour of work. So we're not going to do the whole trail of just cutting branches and then the whole trail of in raking. We want a group of 20 kids to take care of a small section of the trail, top to bottom. That way, when they leave the trail, that is their trail, and they feel that they really completed the entire project. The team, so this is one of the teams that delivered the project. Really, we need some great animators slash clowns. It's really, you need some key people there to keep those kids interested, motivated. We want them to have a positive experience. There are tons of considerations, safety as much as fun. So it's pretty tough to find people that are that can do all of that really well. Those people at the same time are obviously trail builders, the animation team. Let's not kid ourselves. We hire them as animators. In reality, they end up working a lot. So yeah, you need some people who don't shy away from hard work. And like I said at the beginning, sometimes the community can be disorganized a little bit. So you need to have a team that goes in the community and is able to adapt and make something magical with not much sometimes. And sometimes you go you end up in the forest, and the forest is just a tough forest to work in. Sometimes it's just too easy. Also too easy. How are we going to work for 5 days here? We need to come up with good ideas to use the kids' time to not finish too fast. And so most of the time that's not what happens. It's more the other opposite. So it's just too much work. So we need to do some extra time and optimize the kids' energy. But anyway, the team, a lot of this depends on rests on the team's shoulders for sure. I told you already that the entire school, so all students of the school participate in the project. The high school students are going to be the ones doing the trail building. So the actual work with the tools are going to be the high school students. We do allow, that's always, it's chosen by the education department of the community or the school director, depending, they know their kids, right? So sometimes they'll let their sixth graders or seventh graders, those younger kids participate in the actual trail building. It's up to them. The elementary kids need to be involved as well. Normally, we involve them by having them visit and walk the trails. Why? Well, walking the trail is sometimes just as important as building the trail. The more a trail is walked, the more the better it looks, right? So we need them for that as well. We try to work for 2 hours at a time. 2 hours would be, it's actually more 1 hour of work because there are some explanations, there are some icebreaker games, there are some things, some breaks. So we try to keep it as fun as possible. So it's not 2 hours straight. It's about an hour inside of a 2 hour period. And we're going to do that 2 times per day. So once in the morning, and then in the afternoon, we'll have a different group that comes. So we'll do that 2 times per day, every day for 5 days, with the final day being the inauguration. What's the inauguration? The inauguration is where the party happens. So it's the final day, final Friday of the Grand Portage project. During the entire week, we promote that inauguration. So even before the trail, even before a single cut was made in the forest, the inauguration is already being announced. So, hey guys, everybody, the whole population, parents, come see the work that your kids put in on Friday at 1 p.m. at that place. So the whole community comes. Those are really big events. It's amazing to see. And that is normally organized by the community. So we really try to let the community lead this. They decide what they want to have. Sometimes they're going to have a barbecue, some music, an opening prayer by an elder. They want to have a traditional meal. They want to cook. They can do all of that. Typically, what we organize is an event that we call the Fox Challenge, which is the third project I'm going to talk to you about in just a minute. So that's just a separate event, completely separate event, but that just motivates the entire population to perform that, to the 2 kilometer walk slash run. So the whole population participates, everyone's invited, and yeah, the turnout is crazy for those events. And there's a possibility for them to keep on using the trail after. I'll get back to that in just a minute when I talk to you about the Fox Challenge. All right, pros and cons of the Grand Portage. Well, once again, it's open to everyone, so that's fun. We have 100% of the kids that participate in the trail. We do often have a few kids in wheelchairs. So when that happens, we'll work a little bit more on one part of the trail so that part of the trail is accessible in a wheelchair. We'll have that person in a wheelchair come. That person is going to work specifically on that section of the trail. We want really, we do everything we can to have those people, to have everybody participate. Obviously, it's culturally relevant because we work in the forest and the people are working on a portage trail. You know, those portage trail that our ancestors would do portage on. That's exactly what they're building. Now we have a more durable impact on health. Like definitely now we're creating an infrastructure whose sole purpose is to develop and maintain health. So that's a really big one. We develop skills, we work with tools, we are right there on community, environmental awareness. Yeah, that's funny. It's, I don't know if you have similar experiences, but it's trash. Just throwing out trash in nature is something that is not infrequent in communities. So it's a good opportunity for us to show the kids, hey, let's pick up after ourselves, and we leave a durable infrastructure. That's something really big. Yes, by the way, and I know some of you are from communities. I know you already have trails, and I put that in quotation marks. You do already have skidoo trails or four-wheeler trails. That is not what we build in the Grand Portage. Why? Because those trails are not the types of trails where you feel safe. You don't feel safe walking on a trail that has no signs. So you don't know where you are, how many kilometers you've done, and when you're going to exit the trail. And you do not feel safe on a trail where you have that type of machinery that can, that can use the same trail as you. So in the Grand Portage Trail, what we build is a trail that is too narrow and too technical for any type of machinery to use. So sometimes we go in communities where there's already a wide network of trails, but those trails just cannot be used by the population. So the type of trail that we build is for walking, running, snowshoeing only. We do have seasonal constraints. You can't build a trail in the winter. At least I wouldn't know how. So that's tough. Pretty demanding on the team. I explained it already. 4 per year is pretty much the maximum amount of trails that we can build. So we're pretty limited in the amount of communities that we can visit. Weather dependent. The last Grand Portage that we did, it rained 5 days straight. It still managed to be fun, unbelievably so. On the last day, on the Thursday afternoon, actually the fourth day, it was a free day. So everybody that wanted to come could come, and it was pouring rain. And in spite of that, we had our best turnout. So, but they still would have had even more fun had it not rained that much. And mobilized on last day, not before. What I mean by that is you saw the turnout for the inauguration. So final day of the Grand Portage, the entire community is mobilized. We have hundreds of people that are suddenly interested in what we're doing. Well, we wish that kind of turnout that kind of mobilization was already there when we got there on the community, and we were trying to mobilize, some workers to help us. So it's funny. It's just something that we notice every year, every time we do the Grand Portage. We're like, see, guys, we told you, we told you it was going to be like this. So why didn't you get hyper mobilized before we this all happened? But it's just how it is, right? Final project. So I told you about the inauguration, and I will wrap this up I'll try to do this in 8 minutes. So the Fox Challenge, that's a third of the 3 projects. I just told you that in the Grand Portage, when we're done building the trail, on the final day, we organize an event. All right, well, how do you have an entire population walk, run, or snowshoe? It could be snowshoe. For 2 kilometers. How do you motivate them? Well, we do it through something called the Fox Challenge. What's the Fox Challenge? The Fox Challenge is basically we're trying to turn you into a fox. What's a fox? A fox is someone that does the distance, covers the distance of 2 kilometers, either by walking, by running, or by snowshoeing. That's it. And if you are a fox, then you receive the Fox medal. As you can see, this is the actual medal that we give out. If you're native, you might recognize the word fox in your language. On the band here, we use the 9 languages that we have in the Quebec territory. But we see that the words are pretty similar across languages, so I'm sure it's going to be similar to yours as well. So, and that's what we do. Now, 2 kilometers, we don't change anybody's life by having them walk, run, or snowshoe 2 kilometers, right? So that's why the Fox Challenge, actually, in being a fox, is just the start of the project. It's made to get something started and motivate you to go a step further. Now, what are the further steps? Once someone is a fox, we send them documentation and we motivate them to try to become porcupines. So here you can see a few of the next medals that people can achieve. So they can go for the 4 kilometer challenge. They can go for the 6 kilometer challenge. They can go for the 8 kilometer challenge. And we just started having a 10 kilometer challenge as well, which is the Eagle. So, and by the way, they have to be done in order. So you cannot do the 4 kilometer challenge unless you are a fox. So you're a fox, and then you move on to the next one, and then the next one, and then the next one. Our hope is that at some point in your in that succession of goals, you are gonna have to make changes to your life habits. So after you've done your 8 kilometer challenge and you really want to go for the final one, the 10 kilometer challenge, well, you might feel a little ache, here and there. You might feel like okay, maybe that was a tough one. Maybe I should have eaten better. Maybe I should have slept better. So you might start training for your next one. You might start eating better. You might consume less. So there's a bunch of things that you're going to put together in order to move on to the next goal. And our objective is to add more and more challenges, a 12 kilometer challenge, a 15 kilometer challenge, a 20 kilometer challenge. And then starting at those distances, that's when we're going to partner up with a large event. that already organizes those kinds of distances, like trail races, for example, so that we can have how do you call them? Anyway, places where you the ravitaillement in French. So places where you can drink water and have food and have first aid, and where you can be taken off course if you need to. Anyway, but all of those first challenges up to 10 kilometers can be done right there in the community. So typically what we do is we organize the first challenge, the Fox Challenge, in the community, and then we leave the rest of the medals to a community worker, and they are the ones organizing the same challenge for example, every Friday for 4 weeks. So every Friday, the community gets together, and the ones who haven't done the Fox get the Fox, and the ones who have already done the Fox now can move on to the Porcupine for 4K, or do 6K, 8K, whatever they want, and then try to get as many medals as possible. So those are the medals that we have. Here you have an example at the bottom. You have it's a kit that we put together. So you have a buff that we give to people, a bag. So that's all to interest people into the next challenge. So we give them the Fox medal after they've done 2 kilometers, and then we tell them, hey, now you can move on to the 4-kilometer challenge, and we'll give you those gifts at the same time, because that's the turning point, right? It's easy to participate in the 2-kilometer challenge because it's kind of it's a low distance, and it's a large event. Sometimes we even make it mandatory in a school. So every school kids gets out of class, does 2 kilometers. So motivation is not a factor here. Where motivation comes into play is when we want to have those kids or those people who did 2K and move up to 4K. That's where we need that extra push of motivation. So that's why we have those extra gifts that we give to whoever passes that turning point, that does the 4K. And once we have that person captured, what I mean by captured is when someone is captured by the project, because now they have 2 medals, it's gonna be way easier motivation-wise for them to move on to 6K and 8K. So we don't need those gifts anymore. Pictures of people receiving their medals. Here was, I think it was a leadership camp off community, where we have kids from various reserves that did the 2K challenge together. The Fox Challenge, the pros and cons. Once again, it's open to everyone. Immediate gratification. Yeah, kids like that. They get the medal, right? And in town, we don't like medals anymore, right? In towns, everybody gives medals for every event. In community, we don't get that as much. So it's still very cool to get that immediate gratification. Let's not underestimate that. It happens right there on community. It's a simple project. It's low cost. The cons, the usual weather dependent. If it's raining one day, it's certainly going to be a bit less fun. And a large proportion of people just won't make it to those changes, those longer distances, which would require some changes in their habits. Most of them, I'd estimate about maybe 70-80% will do the Fox Challenge. They'll have their 2-kilometer medal, but they won't move on to the next stage. That depends also on the person that's there managing the project, of course. That's it. So I tried to 8 minutes exactly for the Fox Challenge part. Here's my email address. I wrote my personal email address. So if you want to reach out, you can reach out. I'm pretty sure we're going to share my email address with you. If you need to reach out, feel free to do so. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, thank you, David. Yeah, anybody, if you have any questions, feel free to write them in the chat or unmute yourself and ask a question of David? I always love your the branding on everything. It's like someone's obviously a graphic designer in the mix. Or is that you? Do you do all that?
No, I
Okay.
wish. I wish. No, we yeah, I think it's important, right? It's something that you're trying to sell. You know,
Yeah.
those projects are products that you're trying to sell, and having a good branding is a good first step when you're
Yeah.
trying to launch something.
Yeah, and it's appealing, probably draws people to it more too. Yeah, anybody, if you have any question, please feel free to type it up or ask.
Ali, hello.
Hello.
Lisa,
Hi, miigwech for sharing. I'm Nishnabek from Ontario, and I'm a health promoter here. I'll put my camera on. But we do similar. I do a similar program. Well, it's called the Res Walk, and we try and get. I work with 8 different communities, First Nations communities, not school based. It's community based. Um, but we're trying to bring back the Res Walk, just to make our communities more walkable and people using their commute. So I was really interested. I really liked the Fox challenge, and how you. I really like that concept, and I would be interested in doing that with our program. The program we have is called Ambam Majida, so that means let's move in Anishinaabe. So we have 3 different projects. Is the Res Walk, and then we have a physical activity challenge where they track their fitness on like a calendar for a month. And then the other, there's another, yeah, and then the Res Walk. Um, so and then we try and do it at different times throughout the year. So like our Res Walk is in the summer, and then the challenge is in February when people aren't being active as much. So yeah, so I think it's a really cool idea to have the buildup of the fox to porcupine to hare. So I might be in contact with you just to talk a little bit more about it. But miigwech for sharing. Thank you. Oh, and I guess it's funded by the Lawson Foundation, is it?
uh, not the Fox Challenge. The Fox Challenge is who is financing that? It's under the New Pathways Foundation. I believe it's under the Quebec Ministry, some kind of Quebec Ministry. You know what? I'm not entirely sure. Mm.
Okay.
It's a pretty cheap
Great.
project. We just you buy the medals, you know. So and it's the kind of stuff that you can do on your own. You know, we share the resources, the contacts. You get your own funding, you buy the medals, and then you're good to go.
Yeah. And I think one other con could be, well, for me, I find a lot of the community workers are really bombarded with their own work plans a lot of the time. So when I'm coming into the community, you know, they don't want something so extravagant. So I like how it's very simple for them to do it on their own. I guess that's not a con, that's a pro. But yeah, that's just one thing to think about is all these workers, or like if they're community-based workers, they have their own work plan, and making sure that it fits within what they're doing already, kind of thing. It's like a packaged program that they can just plug into their work plan.
For sure. And one thing we already thought, we just never implemented it that way, but it's totally doable, would be to have a centralized mailing system where you imagine you go in a community, we have everybody in the school perform the Fox Challenge, and then you have the parents sign up on a website and receive medals or via the mail. So that way, the community worker only has to organize that first event, and then everything else is managed by the families themselves. And you have tons of other projects that do similar things. Like for during COVID, we had virtual races all the time where you would register for a race, you receive your medal, but you're not allowed to put on your medal until you've done the event. So something similar could be done, which will make it even easier for the community workers.
Okay. Now, miigwech, thanks again.
Thank Lisa Marie. And another hurdle, and I was going to ask you, Lisa Marie, if you had that same problem, but we have lots of dogs on communities. And so it's one of the pros actually of the Grand Portage. It's for some reason, I don't know if it's territorial or something, but dogs don't go in the forest though. They stay in the communities where there's garbages and people, but they don't go, you don't see them in the forest around the community. So building that trail is yeah, it's a pretty important building block for anything that comes after that if you don't want to have problems with dogs.
Yeah, we did have problems. I was supposed to do it in one community, but they said the dog problem was too bad, so we had to switch up the community. Oh yeah, and I had another question about the trails. How do you deter like the environmental impact like of do you determine that before with the community or
What do you mean by environmental impact?
like animals and stuff and I don't know, insects or like
Yeah,
or plants, like specific plants that you don't want to
plants
get
is
in.
plants is a good one. Yeah. So actually plants is a good for animals and all that. I honestly I'm not a specialist by any means. I don't think we have any significant impact on anything. Like what we use, like there is no machinery. There are no trees that are fallen. The only trees that we will cut down are trees that would be dead and dangerous for walkers. Then we'll have community workers. We'll tag the tree and we'll say, hey, this tree, there's a tree there that's dangerous. Could you go and remove it? So our impact is very, very mild. Now we're not bringing any outside material. We're not. It's not even a bike trail. It's really a portage trail. It's a tiny little single track. Now plants, it's something that we actually use that. We pretty much in every Grand Portage that we did, we had elders come out with the kids and do some medicinal plant teachings to the kids. And then we even work with those elders to come up with where the trail is going to pass so
Mm.
that it features those places where you can collect mushrooms or that kind of plant, or there's a special rock over there that I used to go with when I was young, to go to when I was young. So we'll set up the course of the trail with those people to take all that stuff into consideration.
Very cool. Awesome.
Thanks, David. There's a question in the chat. Do you travel to other regions to present to other organizations?
Thanks for your question, Shane. Well, I would love to. I went to BC to spend a year in BC with the plan that I was going to network with communities over there, and I realized, yeah, our world is really complicated, really complex. I showed you the map. 11 nations just in the territory of Quebec, tens of communities. So like I know my part of the world very well. But when I went to BC, it's another world completely. There are so many other nations, in each with their little particularities. So I would love to travel to other regions. My expertise, however, is very limited to what I know.
Thank you, David.
Mhm.
Yeah, it doesn't look like there's any more questions in the chat. If anybody has any you want to ask, this will be the time. Otherwise, we will thank you all for joining us today. Very much appreciated. Very much appreciate David joining and sharing all of that. It's excellent to see. Well, I've known you a few years now, and then you've always been working on this stuff. It's just great. So yeah, happy to see it again.
Thank you, guys. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you everyone for joining. Take care. Have a great day.